I wandered for many years, and I finally found it. Beer Bubble! Hey guys, and welcome back to Beer Bubbles, the number one bubbliest podcast in the world, we think. Hi Cece.
Hello.
Hi you Will.
Hello.
So we're sitting here today with Jewel, and as our world of beer is growing bigger and bigger, we figured that we're going to talk about tasting beer, especially from the aspect of being a beer judge, which
Yes.
you are. And you already know Jewel from before, as the Swedish beer historian from Magier and the Happy Face.
And the
That would be me.
fantastic tours.
And the fantastic
Beer
craft beer
tours.
tours. Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Will.
Hello. Nice to be back.
So in the script, I wrote that you were gonna make a small joke now. So
Okay. Small joke.
Tiny one.
how do you become a beer judge, and what does a beer judge do?
The way that I know how to become one, and the way I did it, is through the Swedish Home Brewing Association. I got more and more into beer. I got more and more interested in it, and I brewed beer a little bit, and then eventually we talked about this. I'm not a big home brewer anymore, but I still like the flavors and judging beer. And then you go and you apply to the course, and you take part in the course, and hopefully you pass.
And if you don't, you're not a beer judge.
No, then you're not a beer judge. And then you judge the national competition. So the biggest one is in the spring. We just had the national competition from all of Sweden. There was a bit of a problem this year, though. Gothenburg failed. No, it was supposed to be in Gothenburg. It was supposed to be before COVID. But now they declined their their application for having the tastings. So the way you get around things for home brewing competitions, for having people to visit without sort of officially paying for beer, which you can't, you just charge them to come inside the door, and everybody there treats the guests to their beer. So it's more of an exhibition of the beers from Sweden. Anyways, so this is usually a big thing. This year it was nothing, because the city of Gothenburg thought that no, you can't have this event and sample beers. It is against the rules and regulations regarding alcohol. We could serve them in a spoon, which roughly that size of sample, which would not be a very fun sort of beer festival. But anyways,
I drank beer from
But
a
you
spoon.
the competition was still on, so
yeah,
the judges were allowed to try the beers.
Yeah, so that's the difference. You have like the People's Choice. And that's the people that are actually there live, and they try it, and they and you apply through an app, and you do it before the end of, or through a website, you do it before the end of the day. So you've got the People's Choice Awards that they take place on the actual during the actual event, and anybody can partake in that. But the beers that are judged by the judges is judged usually 2 weeks in advance, all throughout Sweden, and we divide the different categories, and you judge them according to style. So I did that, let's see. Well, anyways, recently, 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, anyways, and then you sit around essentially usually 1 full day or 2 full days. I was lucky this year because I judged the mild ale category.
Wasn't that big?
No, it wasn't that big, and they're not that strong. So I was just there for 1 full day.
All right.
So what you do is you judge the beers according to the different categories. So they need to, you need to find if there are faults, if they sort of comply with the style guidelines, essentially. So I forgot what your question was already. I'm going into it, but
Yeah, go on.
Go
Anyways.
crazy.
So you judge them according to the style guidelines that we have. So that's very different from the People's Choice, for example, where you think, oh, it's a great beer, I like it, I'm going to give it good marks. Here it's like it needs to be correct and according to the category. Essentially, it's just like this, a bunch of guys sitting around a table quietly.
not talking to each other.
Uh-huh.
No, not until
You're
the
not
end.
allowed to.
So first you have like a flight, but this is how it's different from judging commercial beer, which we can get into because we've done that together once. These first you sit quietly and you judge your way through a flight. Everybody does, and for example, you might have 5 or 6 beers in one flight in the same category. Hopefully, that would be best. And then at the end of that flight, you sort of talk your way through it. So you always have a head judge that's sort of in charge of making sure that everything is correct and also has the final word if there's any sort of, usually not a fight, but sometimes you can be a little bit like, I don't agree with you, and then you have to find disagreement. And what you do is you judge your way through them, and then you put a score together. And you need to be more or less in the same category. One of the judges can't put like horrible or like give it failing grade, and the other one giving it an excellent grade. That would be very confusing. So you need to find like what's the reason why you marked this so low, or why did you mark it so high, or vice versa. So
That's really different from commercial judging,
yeah,
because then your vote is your vote.
yeah, your vote is definitely your vote, and it's a lot more efficient. At least when I've done it. So this is more going into detail with the judging. Yeah,
No, I'm good. It's your show.
it's my show. Okay.
He's the host today.
Yeah,
We are the guests.
yeah, you're the guest. Nice. Welcome to Beer Bubbles. Anyways, so today I figured we'll start with kind of like one of the first sort of categories according to the style guidelines. So we're starting from the lager category. And I also think these are interesting to show because there are differences. They're sometimes subtle, but you can still you find them. It doesn't take a pro to find the differences, and you can understand, but they're still a little bit more subtle so that they're not extremely different. So it's a fun way of sort of polishing your tasting abilities, sort of.
And it's also fun to see that, like, normal light lager can be so much different from another light lager. It's because when people walk into restaurants, most people, I'm not going to say everyone, but lots of people go into a restaurant and they expect a light lager to be the same. Doesn't matter really what brand it is, but it can be immensely different.
It does matter.
Definitely.
Flavor does
definitely
matter. You heard it in Beer Bubbles first.
I think
Flavor
they've heard
matters.
it before.
Yeah.
Second then.
So I'm not sure if you think I should start pouring the beers or introduce first how we do it. What do you
Introduce first how you do it, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I could start pouring the beers.
Okay.
Which order do you want them? Do you want
Just
I
start with the
want
Bud
them
Light,
right? 1, 2,
in
3,
that,
yeah?
Okay. I have an idea. I hope it was a good idea. I'll explain it to you later. So first what you do, Cece opens this and we listen. There we go. A healthy little, and that means it's carbonated to a nice level. You don't have to pour very much. Like that is perfect. If we were to judge this in a judge setting, I would be spitting in a cup, and we would have like Wonder Bread, the most boring white, pale, not very fun bread at all, just to make sure that we can cleanse our palates a little bit.
Yeah.
Then we also have water. So usually you have a spitting cup, but we skipped that today.
Yeah,
'cause
we don't want to spit in for you before you guys because we do have a camera here. So
spitting doesn't look good,
no,
but it's good for you if you want to try beer, especially if you're trying like 100 beers in a day. Then it's a good idea to spit. Anyway, when we pour these, Cece's pouring them really. There we go. Pouring them more or less straight down. So depending on what category you're trying, this could be quite important, because if you twirl it a little bit, you might get more of the stuff at the bottom of it. You might get yeast or other things like that. Usually when we judge, if we're 4 or 5 judges, you're going to have to more or less empty out the entire bottle. But it says something about the beer anyways. It's going to be different if you get the first of the bottle or the last of the bottle. So we've done sort of a visual and an auditory. We've listened to it. We've seen it been poured. And now the thing that's most sort of urgent, most rush to do, is to smell your way through a flight. And I always do all of them at once, a little bit of a whiff throughout every one, and write them down, just so I get my first sort of my first idea of the beer.
Your first impressions.
Yeah, first impressions, and then I can sort of go in depth in every one after that. So I always start by just taking one at a time. So
and the reason for that is because aromas escape.
Yeah, escape quicker.
Yeah.
So if I'm not the one pouring and if I'm not talking like I did now, usually when you're the judge sitting and waiting, usually when they pour down, you can more or less immediately put your nose in it. But you could always whisk it around a little bit to get a bit more head on it, and then you get the aromas out. And then you stick your nose in there. And this is an interesting thing that I learned from a friend who does yoga, that throughout the day, you never have full function in both nostrils. It's always either one or the other, more or less. You have a little bit in one, airflow in one, and one is more or less completely open, unless you have a cold, but then you shouldn't judge. But I'll get to that too. So you can try this yourselves. If you stick your noses in, I myself, for example, at the moment, I'm a right nostril.
I'm a left nostril.
I'm a right one.
Yep. So you notice
I'm the weird one here.
odd one out.
Yeah.
But that differs. So that's why you see people looking like this, because they're sort of
Going with their side towards the
Yeah,
glass. Side of the nose.
So there are several different ways of smelling a beer. You could always sort of cup it like this, hold your hand above it, whisk it around, and then smell it. This is also important that you don't have use soap that has a lot of smells to it. When you judge, depending on how serious you want to be, but they recommend you not to drink coffee in the morning,
And not to wear perfume.
not to smoke, not to eat spicy food, not even the day before. But the most important one for me is not to brush your teeth in the morning. So let's say I'm getting up at 8 and I'm judging beers at 10. The toothpaste actually still around for quite a long time. So usually what I do is I brush my teeth with almost no toothpaste. But I still drink coffee, and I don't worry too much about what I eat. I might not eat chili the day before, but that has worked for me. But I'm sure I'm missing a little something anyways.
I've got a little tip that I learned from a whiskey blender as well. That your natural aromas you actually have on the back of your hand. So if you want to neutralize your aromas in your nose, you smell the back of your hand and get back to zero again.
Yeah.
Like start over.
Right. Yeah, you do that. You smell your own hand, and you can smell water as well as drink it to sort of neutralize your nose a little bit. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to try 3 different Pilsners, because I want to sort of talk about the progression and the differences. If you talk to a Czech person, where is Pilsner from? They would say it's from Pilsen. It's a city in the Czech Republic. And if you ask a German person, where is Pilsner from? Well, it's also German.
It's from Bavaria.
Yeah, it's a German beer. No, but I think people would agree that it originated in Pilsen. But the difference is that the person that actually brewed it, he was a German man using German yeast. He was just happened to be in Pilsen at the time. But anyways, what I was trying to get to...
Josef Groll, wasn't it?
Yeah.
1842.
1842. But what I'm trying to get to here is you have one major difference between the Czech and the German style of beer. The German Pilsner is fermented out a lot drier. So it's drier, essentially the same ingredients, but the water quality also plays a big role. So you have 2 different categories of Pilsners when you judge beer. So I figured we would try to see if we can notice any difference between these 3 beers. I was trying to make a bit of an bow, go from a drier Czech Pilsner to the traditional, more sort of full rounded one, to a dry Hanseatic or Northern German Pilsner, to see the differences between them, if we can tell the differences, and talk about the differences, I guess.
Sure.
So if we start by smelling the first beer here, what you usually find in a Czech Pilsner is that sort of it's close to diacetyl, and I'm not sure how many of your viewers know what diacetyl is.
We actually said we're going to do a show about
off
flavors as well. So, but we'll come to that.
Yeah, but anyways, sort of if it goes extreme, it goes buttery. it's acceptable at least in a Czech Pilsner.
But at very, very tiny amounts.
Yeah. And that's the extreme. It's not going to taste like baby poop.
Ursäkta, det är någon av våra mickar som knäpper. Är det du som håller i...
Hello.
För så här, typ jordfel.
Jag hörde ett annat. The Czech Pilsners are of course not supposed to have baby poop. But when they're sort of in the middle, it could be like butter popcorn. The artificially flavored popcorn, microwave popcorn, they are flavored with the actual, with diacetyl. There are people that worked in the popcorn plant. This is a very long time ago. They got what was coined popcorn lung. So it apparently is not very good for you if you get a lot of it. And one guy actually sued the popcorn company because he claimed he got popcorn lung from eating popcorn every day, which was, of course, a bunch of crap. But it was an American thing. So you sue people sometimes over there, as you might have heard.
Diacetyl is basically butter acid.
Yeah.
I gotta have warning signs for everything over there.
So when it's almost not detectable, I think you go a little bit more towards, you can feel a little honey note. I think that's what I usually pick out from a Czech Pilsner, when you feel that's like, it's almost diacetyl, but it's not really. And also sometimes a little bit like yogurt. It has like honey yogurt could be a descriptor, and then you should feel the sort of characteristic herbal aromas of, in the case of a Czech Pilsner, it's Saz, the
famous hop.
The famous hop, yeah. The noble hop.
S-A-A-Z.
Yes.
It's spelled.
Zaz.
Zazzy.
Cheers.
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 So, when I judge, I usually, it's like 80% of the time I spend on just smelling it, because the taste, it says something about the beer, of course, as well. But the aroma, I think that's where you...
And the thing is also, if you do a professional tasting, you spit.
Yeah.
So the mouth of the beer is not as important as the nose. If you drink the beer and swallow it, you get the full mouth feel and also the reflux from the carbon dioxide when it goes up in your nose again.
Yeah, you're right. There are a few things you miss out on, like bitterness a little bit as well, and flavor. You need to have it all the way down. But we're not doing that when we judge. Anyways, so this is an example of, it starts out semi-sweet, still not sweet. This is a relatively dry beer at the end, but it has that little honey note, and it then dries out with the bitterness from the Saz hop. So I figured we'll see what the original, because we started with the Budvar.
Budějovice Budvar.
Yeah.
Or Budweiser as it was called.
Yeah.
Until they skipped out on the lawsuit from Budweiser in the US.
Yeah. Speaking of lawsuits in the US, twice in a very short amount of time. So now in glass number 2, if you stick your nose in there and smell it, at least to me, it feels even more sort of honey-ish.
It's a lot maltier as well.
Yeah,
on the
More
nose.
malty, yeah.
I know that they have a yeast that doesn't ferment out as much. This category of beer is the 12 point. It's the sort of exclusive version of the Pilsner. In the Czech Republic, this is what you drink for parties, generally speaking.
It's the Grease Plato, which is basically the content of sugar that is fermentable in the beer. So it tells the alcohol strength as well.
Yeah. But this one doesn't really... It has a lot of residual sweetness left as well. Well, not a lot, but it has some. Depends on what you compare it to.
It's a lot more malty.
Yeah.
As well.
It's got a much bigger mouthfeel as well.
And then the bitterness is rather strong at the end there.
Yeah.
Feels really herbal to me. So you have a drier example in the first one, but these are still examples. These are all what... If you want to brew the perfect Czech Pilsner, you brew something like any of these, and you're home safe. You're golden. So these are the examples. That's what that's the bar where they set the bar. So that's like the drier version can be as dry as this one, and the more fuller version can be roughly as full as this. There can be variations, but I thought it was fun to see.
We can tell people not watching as well that the second one we're drinking is the original. It's the Pilsner Urquell that Josef Roll created, they say at least, in 1842.
So these are two good examples of what a Czech Pilsner is supposed to, taste like. And now I figured we jump over. It's good to also mention for those who are not watching that we're drinking one of the more famous German or North German Pilsners, but I'm going to get to that. Jever, or anybody want to pronounce it in a better way?
Jefer.
Jefer. Sounds like a curse.
V is an F in German.
Yeah.
Jefe.
No, that's something.
the boss.
Il Jefe.
Anyway, the German Pilsners can differ depending on where in Germany you are. So the further north, the drier and the more bitter, but there are variations. But this is a good example to sort of let it stand out from the Czech example. And when we judge in Sweden, this is the archetype. This is the bar
for northern style Pilsner.
Yeah, and this is what we've set for German Pilsner overall.
Okay.
Although it allows for more sweetness, but it has to have that sort of minerally thing that we're going to get to.
Yeah, I was going to come to that because it's quite. I've tried this before, and what I find it's got quite an aggressive bitterness, but also a mineral note to it.
Yeah, it's very harsh. I think it's a good example so that you can sort of understand the styles.
But when you judge Pilsners in a category, do you separate like for the Czech styles or German styles, or are they?
They are two different categories. Yeah. So, but I mean, they're still very much related, so they can be quite close to each other, and they would most likely do all right in both categories. But there are things that sort of stand out from a Czech Pilsner, and one of them is the fact that the water is really soft in the Czech Pilsner, and really harsh and hard and sort of dry and minerally in the German style.
I mean, if you were to find the acetal in a German Pilsner, judging that would be correct, and
no
other way around. So.
Then it feels more like possibly you could find traces of DMS, for example. But now we're back in the off-flavor things but the sort of boiled cabbage sort of thing.
Well, if you've ever had a corn in a tin, and you open the tin and you smell it, that is DMS.
I would say that's more common, that you get trace amounts of that in the German Pilsner rather than the diacetyl, but doesn't matter.
Well, that's mainly because of the yeast, but let's not go into that. Let's do that in the episode about the off flavors.
Yeah.
But this is lighter in color as well.
Yeah. So it is drier and it has fermented out more. So even if they would have had the same carbohydrate content, if you will, or fermentable sugars, the German Pilsners, they ferment out more of the fermentable sugars. So it's drier and it's lighter. Also, there's a slight difference in depending on how you do it. But the Czech style, they now we're going into things again like decoction and whatnot. But generally speaking, there is a slight color difference, like in the case of this, where the German Pilsner tends to be slightly lighter than the Czech Pilsner. But it wouldn't be a fault if it would have been golden. I usually use I try to explain it by drinking regular water versus drinking like mineral water. So apart from the bitterness, you can also feel that it's sort of dry in your mouth and it feels like you've been drinking, because mineral water dries you out a little bit. And also, my brother explained it in a nice way. He's not a beer geek at all, but it's like you're licking a rock. Like you're I don't know if he's ever licked a rock, but if you're out in the archipelago and it's like
almost salty.
Yeah,
everybody is going to go out licking rocks after this episode.
It's good.
No, but it's much drier on the end notes, because it almost makes you thirsty drinking this.
Yeah,
It's got like a hop's hook. Is what I call it. It's like it just drags over your tongue and goes, could I have some more, please?
Yes, it wants you to continue on.
Yes.
But this is a great example, I think, of the German Pilsner, and it's available all over, almost.
Almost.
Rasmus had to chase around to get it today.
Yeah. The first store I went to just had a Budvar and the Pilsner Urquell, and so I had to look for the Jever. Jefe.
Jefer.
Okay.
Javier.
Javier Pilsner, which is very known.
Happy Javier.
Well, I feel now, even when I go back to the water, that I still have like a coating in my mouth that is not just bitterness, but also those minerals. That's a good indicator that you've had a German Pilsner. All of these beers, I'd say, would get full marks for a very good reason.
Well, they are like the benchmark, basically, of both Czech and German Pilsners.
Definitely.
If you went to Bavaria and said that Jever was like the German Pilsner, you get beaten up. But
Yeah, I know. You might not want to say that, but I think we have a nice little variation between these beers, and I like to do these sorts of things when I do tastings, that I bring in two beers that are similar. This is fun because you get people to sort of realize for themselves how big of a difference it could be between beers that they don't really think will be different. And what I usually do when I do tastings like that is that I give them blind, so that they don't know which is which, so that they really have to think about what's in their glass. That's the same when you judge a beer. You don't know what you're judging, because when you know, then you have your preconceived notions. It felt like it was a bad idea not to show the beers, because that would be just annoying for people watching.
yeah.
But it's a very good idea to drink things blind, so that you don't know. Even full-on blind, I mean, like wearing what do you call it?
Blindfold.
Yeah, blindfold. Because that way you're completely at sea.
You can't even see the beer. You don't know because the visual aspect is something as well.
Yeah.
I thought of that when I poured the beers.
Yeah.
That the head retention on the Jefer was much better
than
the other two. So it kept its head longer, and it was a tighter head.
Yeah. Usually the visual aspect of a beer gives away a lot. So, I mean, the more you've tried beer and seen how beer behaves, the more you it can give you a hint of how the beer is brewed. This is also very much, it's almost like something you don't even consciously think about sometimes, but you notice that this beer isn't really well, or like something is wrong, like looking at like you said, the size of the bubbles, or how they behave in the glass.
If it's the same color as the last time you had it.
Yeah.
And the eyesight is a lot, because I mean, when it comes to like tasting wine, if you do it in a black glass, you can mistake a white wine for a red wine, and the other way around, because not all is revealed in the flavor.
No.
Cold red often tastes like white wine if you drink it totally blind. So
yeah, I haven't done many of those tests, but I've done a lot of beer tests anyway. And I think it's a fun thing to do, because you learn a lot, and you realize what you like and what you don't like.
Should we pour some full beer as well? So we get another aspect of German beer.
Yeah, we could do that.
I'll bring the label and show it to you, because this is on tap here at Akkurat. Where we're sitting today, by the way. Thank you very much for being our sponsors and hosting us.
Akkurat Freehouse, the home of Sweden for handcrafted, or the home in Sweden for handcrafted lagers, cask-conditioned ales, vintage beers, goose and lambics.
Goose
and lambics. Imperial stouts and barley wines. During these what do you call it, competitions where you judge, do you go back and forth with the smell a lot, you said? Do you go back and forth with the tasting as well, with the palate?
I try to not do that too much, because I feel that it doesn't... I think you shouldn't hesitate when you judge beers, because when you hesitate, you tend to try to think about other things. I mean, there's something you could have missed, but that's usually covered when you talk it over, at least when it's homebrew competition. But I want to be sort of in the moment and just write it down the second it comes to me, because usually they escape your mind quickly. If you think of something, the weirdest stuff can come up, and you can figure out why. Like, home-baked cookies at my grandma. I like something, and you want to get that in there. Maybe you don't have to write all that out for the person, but at least you figured out what it is that you're smelling.
One thing that I'm interested in, because when I did a sommelier exam, it's when you try wine, it's very like you have these rules, and there's these things, and there's a way you have to describe flavors, because not everybody knows how your grandma's glove smells like. So there needs to be like a language that everybody speaks,
like a vocabulary.
Exactly. Is that something you do when you go this course to being a beer judge?
Yeah, there are like the words that most commonly show up, and in the literature that we read for the education, there are a bunch of those words, and usually it's like a taste wheel or an aroma wheel where like flavors that go from like grassy or whatever, and you go over to like esters, and you tend to have vocabulary in common, if you will.
The big problem is that the common person doesn't have that.
No.
And that is the difference between wine and beer a lot, because people know what the leather is if you find it on the nose in a wine.
Yeah.
But if you say ester to someone when it comes to beer, people go, "What the who's Esther? Where is she?
Who the fuck are you talking
Never met
about?
this Esther.
She seems nice though.
No, but definitely there is a big difference there, and it doesn't feel as controlled. But I try to be as basic as possible, and they tell you to be like, don't reinvent the wheel. If you smell, if it's roasted or toasted bread or something like that, just write that. Don't try to make it more complex. I mean, if there's something that you think that people understand, you can write that down. But generally speaking, you write down a few descriptive words. And I know if there are any homebrewers watching this, and if you've read the papers that I hand in, sometimes there's not too much in them, especially not during the national competition when you sometimes judge 100 beers or something like that. Then you're like, okay, you got whatever fruit is there and whatever, and then you move on. But this is more of an educational thing, because homebrewers, they might be new at homebrewing, for example, and then you tend to give them tips like possibly fermentation went wrong here, or I would change the malt bill, or I would accentuate these hops or something like that. So this is different from judging commercial beers. It's more of an educational thing, and it's very good because you learn a lot more, especially when you're with seasoned judges and they go into very much detail.
I know you said this before we started recording, but I'm going to ask a question so the listeners can. Is there a middle ground you can go through when judging beer?
You mean
when you score them?
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to score them according to the style guidelines, and sometimes maybe, for example, we might not agree on the level of sweetness. We might think, okay, but I don't think this is sweet enough, or I think this is too sweet, or whatever else. But when you judge in a group, you're usually 4. Depends. You can be less, you can be more, but you need to be sort of grouped together so that one judge can't completely destroy a beer and give it like no points at all, and the other gives it an excellent score. So you need to sort of figure that out.
What kind of grading do you have at the homebrewers?
It's up to 50. So the starts with like problematic, and that usually means something went really wrong. So it's not a fully functioning beer. This beer won't function out in society.
It's a sociopath.
Yeah. And then you start going up to, it's a passable beer, but it doesn't pass in the category. And then you get higher up, you're like, this is a really good one. And if you go up, 50 is the highest, so that would be in the excellent category. I've only been up in that sort of last box where you cross and you're past 44, and if some people are like almost fear giving those last few points. Very, very few people that have given one beer like 50 points. So I've gotten better at being nice and really realizing when a beer is good, really well done. Because the problem is sometimes I think that you're looking for flaws. And when you look for flaws and when you don't really swallow the beer, you just try a little bit of it, sometimes you just get slightly skewed. So it's always good to have a few judges along, and you tend to go on the friendlier side of a grading, at least for home brewing.
Does the home brewing
sucks?
Yeah, like don't brew anymore. That's not a
buy
nice.
you a pair of water skis. You're not equipped for this.
does the scale differ from the home brewing judging to?
Oh, sorry. Okay,
commercial?
that's what you were going for. Yeah, of course. It's very different because for commercial beers, you just want to get a lot of scoring done rather quickly.
Yeah,
and you don't want
go
to get
through
stuck in the middle.
lots and lots of beers.
Yeah.
What did we do in Uppsala? 200 beers in a day.
Something like that. Yeah. And it was four different levels, 1 through 4.
Mm.
I actually like that system.
I like that better than the one I've had before, because that was a 5-point system.
A lot of people end up somewhere in the
middle.
middle.
And I'm going like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3.
Yeah.
And if you have 1 to 4, you have to decide if it is a good beer or if it's not.
Yeah, the 1, 2 becomes negative, and the 2, 3, 4 becomes positive.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
I did when I do these sort of polls during digital tastings, which was big for a while during COVID. I actually adapted that system because then you get people to have to decide, because people tend to be friendly and they say it's okay. So I say, like, it's the most horrible beer I ever tried, or never again. Like, that's the number 1. Number 2 would be it's okay, but I'm not a fan of it. And then like 3 and 4 would be this is really good or this is amazing. So they had to.
So you can't write 2.5.
No. And that got people to sort of decide a little bit more. Okay. So I like that.
So tell us a bit about this style then. It's a classic Southern German style, Helles.
Yeah. So now we're stepping back again in terms of bitterness, because we you know what? Let's try it together.
Mm.
Still a little cold, but I'll whisk it a little bit.
We have cold beer at Akkurat.
Yeah. That's actually good. Then you can decide yourself if you want warmer.
It's easier for the customer to heat their beer in their hand than to cool it down.
What, you don't walk around with a refrigerator on you?
I've got a mini fridge in my backpack all the time. You know that.
In your pocket. No, but this is supposed to be just sort of creamy, malty. I don't know. I forget what the wording is, what the phrase is. But in the Swedish judging, it's like gräddig malt, like creamy malt, or like really bready, and you can sort of sense that there is sweetness coming when you smell it.
Yeah.
So it's a display of malts essentially. Here the hops are taken completely sort of away in the Helles style. You have some hops to balance it out, of course, but you're supposed to have a full beer that sort of dries out a little bit once again when it comes to like water quality.
Highly quenchable.
Yes, definitely. So it starts out rather.
It's got a bitterness to it, but it's only just enough to make it not get overly sweet in the end.
Yeah,
it's more of a sense of let's pull it back. Yeah. Now we need to pull it back to have some more.
Yeah, definitely.
Pulls
so
you back.
Also, you feel a little bit of like the mineral drying it out as well. So it's masterfully done, where it starts as a sweet and sort of full beer, and then vol beer, and then it just sort of dries out and has a tiny little bitterness. But it's a great display of nice malts, really bready and
definitely
malty.
The creamy malt, as you were
saying.
The
creamy malt. I don't know how to say that in a good way in English.
The mouthfeel is really soft, while the Jever is the opposite. Basically, it's like it's a bit more aggressive and like I'm here. While the Schneider that we're drinking now is more like, I like you.
We could be friends.
Yeah.
But still, you can feel that sort of
for one day
minerally drying out at the end, so you feel a little bit in your palate. So it just dries out nicely at the end, but it's fuller and as we said, creamier and yeah,
it's got a bigger mouthfeel as well.
Yeah,
would this also be a high score on your card?
Definitely would. Yeah, and this is a good example of when I've judged this type of beer, like Helles, for example. The ones that do great are the ones who have really freshly milled malts, because this is, I mean, everything else is important as well. Make sure that your yeast is happy and thriving and things like that.
And your hops are fresh.
Yeah, hops are fresh. But here it's just, if you have really, really fresh malts, high-grade malts, and you've just milled them right before you use them, it makes for a very nice,
could almost bet that this is floor malted Hanke malt from Weyermann.
Yeah,
because that's like the most expensive, but also the absolute best.
They've got good malts.
It's highly quenchable.
But this one, instead of being really bitter, it almost feels like it's a little sour at the end, if you know what I mean. And
there's an acidity to it.
Not in acidity. A bad way.
No. That's part of it drying out. So, just to sort of describe the different tastes and
The Gefer.
Jefer. Look at this. And imagine that's an F.
Oh, I thought you said this was an.
No,
So Jefer.
Jefer.
With the Jefer, it's it dries out more. While this becomes more watery, you become more water in your mouth, basically.
you mean the Helles here?
Yeah, it waters your mouth a little bit more. I feel.
Yeah, you mean at the
salivate
end.
more.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you salivate. Okay, now I see what you mean. I thought you meant it was watery, the beer.
No, it waters your mouth a
No.
little bit.
Watery
Right.
beer.
Yeah.
Tastes
That's one slap for you.
That's
Yeah.
not what I meant.
No.
God no.
Yeah, but that's a good sort of some good examples of German and Czech lager beers, and there are of course much more.
We would love to have you back to go through other beer styles as well,
Yeah.
because I think this is fun,
This is really fun.
and we're all about being educational.
Yeah.
Getting educated.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's like a friend of mine said he went to beer tasting, and he knows beers,
Yeah.
but there's always something that you go, hadn't thought of that,
No.
because you always get some kind of little nugget
Yeah.
of information or knowledge
Yeah.
that you can like bring in as your own,
Yeah.
and that is, as long as you, I think it was I saw a quote once that a day when you learn something is a day that not spoiled.
Yeah.
Which is I like that.
Yeah. And beer is a very complex subject. I'm never going to be done. I'm
Oh, no.
learning every day.
Every day we learn
Keep
that
learning.
you need
Yeah.
to learn more.
Yeah, every day you
stay beer
realize how little
curious.
you know.
Right? Stay beer curious.
Yes, stay beer curious.
Definitely. And I think it's fun. I've really gone into the classic styles more lately, and that's one of my absolute favorite things about being a beer judge. That made me appreciate almost every single style out there, because they have things that make them really good, some things that make them not so good. But when they're on point in their category, I like all of them. I'll give an example, because I judged for the last time I judged, we judged some Kölsch. And Kölsch is one of those styles that a lot of people see as a pointless beer style, which in part I understand. But I still want to learn about every beer style. So I went over there and drank a bunch of Kölsch in Köln. And then you really get to try the different variations of it. And now I'm like, oh, I like Kölsch a lot. So I was the only one who marked Kölsch really, really high. No, it was one other guy that had also been to Köln, of course.
You have to go there to appreciate the
Cologne.
style.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, what is a Kölsch?
Oh, the Kölsch is a warm fermented lager. It's actually patented, or you have to be in.
It has to be
in
from
Köln,
Cologne.
or Cologne, I should say. And it is slightly has a slight tartness to it. So it goes a little bit like how can I explain that one in a good way? But it just that little or almost champagne-ish, like a little
It's like
wine.
a multi-lager with an almost tart afternote to it
Yeah,
that completes the beer. And
Yeah.
it's almost always served in like 25 centiliter glasses,
yeah.
small, and then they do not stop pouring until you say,
No, they keep coming out.
They keep coming.
Yeah.
And you go like, first time I was in Cologne and I got absolutely shit-faced.
You didn't know how to stop.
Good thing is that they're not that strong.
No.
They're normally around 4.5% or something
Yeah,
like that.
they are. They need to be exactly 4 point. Let's see, 4 point. Is it 4.7? It's specified, so it can't
Yeah.
be 0.1% different. It's 4.8, I think it is.
Okay.
But that's one of the few beer styles that allows a little bit of DMS, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's when it's well done, it's a very nice, refreshing beer. Especially you drink, as CC said, the small glasses. They never
Ice cold,
Yeah.
in the sun.
Yeah, they never really go. They don't have time to go bad. So it's like a continuous beer. You just get new glasses every once in a while.
Sounds horrible.
And then when you say I've had enough, you always get one more because they've started pouring it. So it's like, oh, that's yours as well. Because like when you say stop, there's one more coming.
Yeah.
So you have to plan ahead.
Oh yeah,
that's
definitely.
Seems like a good idea when drinking. Is there anything more you want to say about being a beer judge before we wrap this up?
No, I love it. But what I want to say, because since you're watching or listening to this, you're obviously beer curious as well. I would recommend people to, first of all, follow me on social media or, find my homepage. I am joelhedman.com or Öldagboken, the beer diary.
Or go on a tour.
Yeah, or go on one of my tours. Stockholm Craft Beer Tour is the biggest one that I do. I do one on Södermalm as well in Stockholm. But what I actually wanted to get to was keep sort of testing yourself and try beers blind, because it's a fun way. So if you're living alone, ask a friend to buy like 3 or 4 beers, preferably in the same category, for you. Pour them without you seeing. If you can't get somebody to do that for you, buy a bunch of beer, take them out blindly from the fridge and pour them without looking. That could be messy. But what I'm trying to say is try more beers and sort of educate yourself by actually testing the beer. Try to not focus so much on the brand of the beer, because you get mesmerized sometimes by the hype of a beer. It's better to just see what you actually think of it.
And if you do follow him on Instagram, you actually put up challenges.
Yeah,
once in a while.
It was put on a little bit of a break when I was away, but I'm going to start again this Wednesday. I'm going to do another, because I take beers that are similar, so that you can try them against each other, and then I sort of put up my response to it, because I do the same thing, so that people can sort of see what I
discuss it and
yeah,
and argue about it and
yeah,
and become angry at each other and
yeah,
and then go out and have a beer and be fine again.
Yeah, I want as many trolls as possible on my no.
Is that your getaway from the episode? We want as many trolls as possible. Okay.
As long as people buy beer and try beer, I'm happy.
Well, this was very educational and very fun to get to know how a beer judge works and what they do. Thank you very much again, Joel, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And guys, whatever you do,
drink better beer.